I moved back to Taos in 1990, and I remember um, immediately being struck by the amount of art, the number of galleries, the amount of art, but also the number of artists that you were running into and part of a collective with in Taos. Have never experienced that before, not even in art school, because the people in Taos were working artists, and so they were living this thing out. And I know the philosophy a lot of times for people is that to live in Taos is an experience that if you can make it, if you can just pay your rent and live there, it's worth trading almost anything for. And I would tend to agree with that on some level. I've kind of moved in and out of New Mexico 5 times in the last 20 years. But Taos in some way has always been home base. And for a number of reasons. One of them is that I had access to a number of world-renowned artists who, whether or not they instructed me on what I was doing or how I would come to do things, more about the life of an artist and how that bears out. And so I was, friends with R.C. Gorman, who has actually been a family friend for 25 or 30 years. He died last year. Wes Mills was my good friend and roommate and came to Taos as a carpenter. And he sort of became Wes Mills right beside me. Over a period of 6 years, he hit a vein in the Santa Fe and then New York art scene that brought him to light, internationally. And so that was an amazing thing to watch, especially so close. As I said, he was my roommate and friend, and that friend, almost a brother, so that there was a lot of tension at times as well, which is awesome. And we're still friends, and he lives here in Montana, about 3 hours from me, and I see him occasionally. But and then there were other artists who really did not fit the New Mexico signature. For instance, Agnes Martin, who is a minimalist and also very much a New York artist, I would think, New York school, who found her way of working in New Mexico, but very minimalist, very abstracted. But she believed that she was abstracting beauty from nature in the classical sense from, I think, the Grecians is what she spoke to me about. But again, someone who I had contact with, and this is a person who was quite old when I knew her, and I generally took her to lunch or to the grocery store and sat with her in her studio at times, and almost a caretaking role. I did like to listen to Agnes. She was a filmmaker as well, so we had art and filmmaking in common. But our ideas often were contradictory, and she spent a lot of time trying to talk me out of my first marriage. She did not believe in marriage. But here is this woman who she was working on canvases that were selling at that time for $500,000 a piece, and internationally known on a level that she may be the most serious artist that I have had the opportunity to sit with and work alongside. R.C. Gorman is obviously known all over, but I'm not sure how serious he was as a person or as an artist. I'm not sure that I could really absolutely say that I take him seriously at what he did. He fashioned a moniker, these Pueblo women drawn very simply in one single line, and then he signs this thing. And I'm not sure I think that there's a depth of exploration. You admire both he and Agnes Martin did one thing. They chose one way of working, one sort of image set, and they stuck to that one thing. And for that reason, they are known throughout the world. I tend to still today work in several fashions and with several materials. So, and I don't necessarily believe that I haven't isolated something. I don't believe that I will ever work with one single imagistic projection and live that out as my signature to the world. I don't see it. And then there were so many artists that I worked. Ron Cooper, very well-known California artist, was a good friend and who I traveled with in Mexico. He has a tequila business in Mexico now. And so I spent time, he was an instructor in school, and then also I spent time seeing what he was doing in Mexico. Larry Bell, very well known. And I would say Larry did instill in me something about my own, what they call gestural mark. He was very into trying to help a person find what their most instinctive mark with a pencil or a brush is. To go back to something very basic, to find something that's essentially you and not someone else's. And then in photography, at the time I was in New Mexico, Joel Peter Whitkin was there, Patrick Nagatani was there. So I definitely had a lot of influence from people who had sort of made it. And that's important for a young person to sort of know that you can, and to come to understand that you're in a line of coming to understand something. The biggest influence on my personal art world at the time was probably Wes Mills, because he was relatively my age, my roommate, and he did enter the art stage on an international level, and that's impressive. Again, we work very differently, I would say, but so, and I think back on these people, not in the way that I work, but the fact that this is my history. It's my particular history to have come in under the tutelage of these people, and to come out the other end who I am, doing what I do. And so, for me, it's obviously my special story. And when I have a cup of coffee and think back on Mexico with Ron Cooper, or sitting with Agnes, bitching about, art and marriage, I'll get old thinking about this stuff. So it's mine. And I'm lucky. I think I'm really lucky to remember these people. R.C. Gorman, how much wine can one artist drink? He wanted to find out. So, anyway, more later on art and remembering.